Welcome back to the Zach Lab channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are doing really well out there. We've got a big video today because I'm going to be judging the next biggest talent coming off of the world's conveyor belts. From South American players, European players. I'm pretty sure those are the only two places I've got them from. So, from those places of the continents, we're going to be looking and ranking them and seeing who could be a possible Ballon d'Or winner and who is slightly overrated. Now, there's a couple of requirements here, not many. The first one is they have to be 21 years old or younger, and a lot of these guys are even younger than that. It's quite ridiculous. And there are also players that are kind of recognisable within the state that they're in, the club that they're in. They don't necessarily have to have played a lot of senior minutes, but there are some guys out there, like for instance at Chelsea, there are many common players, who are highly rated, but they've not played enough. At Arsenal, there's Chidi Martin Obi, for instance, who looks really good. Actually might be going to Bayern Munich, but hasn't played for Arsenal, really. And so we're not going to be including them. There are a couple of those guys who are across the line there, but yeah, we'll see as we get onto it. Now, as for the categories that we've got here, as you can see, we've got at the very top, Ballon d'Or winner. Now, the Ballon d'Or as an award itself, I'm actually not that big of a fan. I think it's a little bit messy, but the point being, they will be the best player in the world. You then got future superstar, who I think is also a really, really good ranking to be in. Those guys can still cost you like 100 mil or so to get. Then we've got keep an eye out. The middle tier. They might have a really good career. We're not too sure. Not seen enough yet. Again, some of these guys haven't really played a lot of minutes, or we need to see more of them in maybe a tougher league to try and get the best out of them. And then the bottom one, overrated. Tough to call youngsters overrated, especially when some of them are like 17 years old or 19 years old. We're kicking things off with Amara Diouf here. Now, this is someone who's only 16 years old. He's recently turned it as well. You might have heard him kind of break headlines when he was 15 and kind of dominating the under-17 World Cup. I mean, he was the youngest ever player to represent Senegal at 15 years old. Now, supposedly, he's on his way to Metz when he turns 18, so a good few years away, kind of following that same path that, say, Ismaila Sarr made, that Papa Sarr that's at Spurs made, that even Sadio Mane made as well before he went to RB Salzburg. He looks good. Like, again, for some of these players, I can't sit here and tell you that I've watched hundreds of minutes of them play football. It's going to have to be highlights for some of them. And for this guy, looks strong in that way, can dribble, like carries the ball well, runs really quickly. He, in these highlights, he's 15 playing against 17-year-olds or even older when he's playing for the first team. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we've just not seen enough, have we? Let's get one of the big boys out of the way. I think we have to talk about Lamine Yamal. This guy, just get it out of the way, is a Ballon d'Or winner. He really is. To be 16 years old and arguably Spain's best player in attack is ridiculous. The guy is outrageous. He's playing Champions League nights. He's doing his homework whilst with the Spain squad during the Euros. The guy is crazy. He might even win the Ballon d'Or before he's 20 years old. Like, that's the talent we're talking about here, and that's like 4 years away. He's someone who I think Barca fans must be over the moon, was given minutes and trusted under Xavi this season. We'll see how he develops under Hansi Flick, and I think that's a really crucial part for Flick, is to make sure they get the absolute best out of him, because they've got an incredible talent. He's one of the most exciting and best wingers, I think, in the world right now already. He can be the best if he's just used right and protected as well. Like, look at what happened to a lot of these Barca kind of academy kids so far. Ansu Fati, I think, in particular, looked incredibly exciting, played a lot of minutes, got one bad injury, and from there, it's a spiral. So they need to make sure they're protecting him, Lamine Yamal, by not overplaying him possibly. But I think he's just a superstar. Juro Hato is the guy we're going to talk about next. He's currently playing for Ajax. He himself, I think, has just turned 18. So, has had a full season basically playing football at 17 years old. And I think what's weird is when you're comparing these guys to, say, like Lamine Yamal, who's doing it at 16, saying they're 18 sounds like they're a lot older. It's still ridiculous. I think we've kind of got to an era in football where we're sort of used to 18-year-olds being pretty good and, adapting to men's football really quickly. But it is still quite a feat to do. But Hato can play centre-back, he can play left-back, he can play in a back three, he can play in a four-back. I think Arsenal are interested in him as well at the moment. He's not necessarily great in the air from what I've seen. I also think he's doing a lot of slide tackling, which makes you question whether he can kind of stay on his feet a little bit more, whether things are having to be a lot more recovery tackles due to bad positioning. But again, when you're a defender and you're playing football at this age, I think a lot of it is just about experience. I think it's similar for goalkeepers as well. It's similar for all of them, really. But I think in particular for defenders, you're at risk of kind of what the rest of your team is doing as well. So for Hato, like, I think it's hard to judge him on kind of having to make some of these recovery tackles when maybe Ajax this season haven't been so good, and the players surrounding him haven't been amazing. He's definitely not overrated. I don't think that's where we were putting him. We've also definitely seen enough. I think keeping an eye out is the best category we can put him in for now. What we've seen is positive. I don't think it's going to be a future superstar just yet. And again, it sounds harsh to say this, but even the future superstar level is like players that, as I said, could be costing £100 million. I want to talk about a player who might end up filling one of the other categories for us here, Rooney Bardi. Now, he came to light, I guess, this season after scoring against Manchester United. I think he, obviously named Rooney. Makes sense why the headlines were all about him. Again, still very, very young, only 18 years old now. And so we've got a player here who, my slight issue is, I think, due to one incredible moment, has been slightly overhyped. He does some really nice things, like he takes on players really well, plays on that right wing fantastically good, like he's had a decent season as well, but it's tough to kind of praise him when, say, I think the league he's playing in and like the guys he's compared to as well on this list have been doing it even longer for better consistency in a tougher league. I'll probably compare him to some player earlier who hasn't necessarily been playing in Europe, and I might rank them higher. But I think right now, Rooney for me is overrated. Let's talk about Leeds player Archie Gray. Again, only 18 years old, played a good majority of the season at 17 years old. Ultimately, it doesn't necessarily matter. But he is someone who I think is quite a nice player to watch. Developing in the Championship, I think, gives you a really, really good season. I think that can develop you and fast track you to make it to the Premier League squads even quicker. Obviously, Leeds didn't get promoted, so there's a lot of eyes on him at the moment. Now, he can play right back, he can play DM. I watched him live for Chelsea, actually, when Chelsea played Leeds in the FA Cup, I think it was, or the Carabao, I think it was the FA Cup. Anyway, I remember thinking the whole time, like, this kid's really, really good, really, really good. Does the simple things really well, passes the ball fantastically, can defend strongly. I think right now, we'll have to keep an eye out. Warren Zaire-Emery now, 18 years old, PSG midfielder, one from the academy as well. It's good to see PSG finally giving players from their academy who are hugely talented game time. And look what you get. You get a ridiculous player. He's had a really good breakout year, I think, this season, playing in the Champions League. He's like a central midfield general. He can basically do it all as well. He's super physical, I think. And when you can get that in a player that's at such a tender age, is a really good quality. I think for a lot of these players, might end up talking about kind of like wingers and attackers, and you might hear me mention it a few times about physically can they grow into it and so on and so forth. But Zaire-Emery's already there. I think he's pretty ridiculous. I would be putting him up here as like a Ballon d'Or winner personally. I think he can go on to do that. If PSG were looking at kind of young midfielders to be bringing in, they could be spending upwards of 70 million euros to go and get him right now. And so to bring him in from their own academy, like, I think he's had a fantastic year as well under Enrique. I think he did a really good job kind of integrating him. This is a hell of a player, and I really can see him lifting the Ballon d'Or one day. On to a Bayern Munich player now, Mathys Tel, who's been part of the academy for a little while now, and had a really good developing year. I wouldn't necessarily breakout year. I think it's a good developing year. I mean, he's got 7 goals and 5 assists, so he's definitely done okay in the league, that's for sure. Plays off of that left wing, right-footed, like, has had a good year, I think, overall. There's been I think for a little while now, people have been saying about when is he finally going to be getting time? When is he finally going to be using the squad? And we've seen it this year, and hopefully you'll see it even more so next season as well. He's only just got over 1,000 minutes for Bayern Munich. I remember there used to be a lot of chat about Xerxes when he was there. Obviously, he's a little bit older now and actually gone on to have a fantastic season. And obviously, he never really got his chance. And I'm hoping Tel can develop on from this season as well. We're going to see what happens with a new manager in Vincent Kompany. But I feel like he'll look at what's in front of him and think that he's got a really, really exciting, good player here. I'm going to be putting him in future superstar. Reminds me a little bit of Rafa Leao. I don't know whether it's because like physically he's quite strong. He's not necessarily massive. I think he's like 6 foot or so not too bad. But I just get a little bit of Rafa Leao about him. Anyway, future superstar. Let's talk about another player that's going to the Euros, this time for England. Manchester United midfielder Kobbie Mainoo, 19 years old. Again, the breakout year for him this season. And I think to perform well in a United midfield, that was a mess. At times, a capitulation. Is a good sign, is a really good sign. I think he has great decision making, is really technical. I think he always picks the right pass, the right touch every single time. I don't think he's necessarily the quickest, which I think if there's like an issue to him when you're playing in midfield, I think that's quite a big thing. I do wonder as well what say long term, if we're going to see him maybe push on to the next level, say kind of being what I think I can envision him to be, you're going to want him to kind of take a hold of that midfield and really make it kind of he is the main man there. But again, to do that, he also needs help tactically with the what happens with the manager, and we'll see what happens, especially with Ten Hag now staying, and also kind of the players around him. I think Casemiro didn't help him at times last year. And so having, say, a fully fit Mason Mount back and a Bruno Fernandes is obviously amazing. And whatever other kind of midfielders they bring in, I think that would be really strong. And if a United side that isn't as injury prone will really help him out too. I think we got a future superstar here. Whether he plays for England as much as expected, we'll see. But I think England and Manchester United have a guy here who is quite frankly ridiculous. Kenan Yildiz now, and this is someone who I always remember breaking through this season, specifically against Germany when he played for Turkey. I always remember filming a Monday Vibes, I think, where we spoke about it, and I was like, this guy looks really, really exciting. And he's gone on to have a really good season for Juventus, for Juve. What level we're going to see him move on to will be interesting. What is this new Juventus? Where will Juve be? Will they be challenging for the top end of the titles? Will he be getting the minutes to be playing in order to do that? Those are kind of questions that are sitting in my head right now. I know Juve fans really, really adore him, and I think it's a good club for him to stay at as well, especially if he can be getting minutes. He's got all the qualities, I think, of a young player that can develop well. Again, passes the ball really well, dribbles really well. In front of goal, maybe we'll have to get him into more opportunities for that. If he can go, I think, under 1,000 minutes this year, if he can get, say, just under 2,000 next year, that'll be really strong. And with Motta in charge, who knows? For now, keep an eye out. Claudio Echeverri now, and this is one that you might have heard of a few times. He's obviously actually got his transfer to Man City happening. He is a Man City player. They bought him, I think, back in January. He was supposed to be going to Girona as well next season, but I think because Girona have qualified in the Champions League, obviously they did fantastic things in Spain last year, he can't, due to UEFA rules. Man City can't be in the Champions League and also their sister club and loan players to each other. So that doesn't look like it's going to be happening. We'll see where he goes to next anyway. I do slightly worry sometimes when players are constantly compared to Messi, he's Argentinian, he can play the 10 role. I do find that's a lot of pressure to put on someone's shoulders. I think he passes the ball really nicely. I can do these tight little dribbles. So, you see why people say it. But a lot of pressure to put onto him. We're going to have to keep an eye out. That loan move is going to be really interesting. If it's not Girona now, who will it be to? Will it be to one of the other sister clubs that aren't in the Champions League? Or will it be somewhere else? So not a sister club for Man City. But anyway, I think Man City have a very interesting player that we should all keep an eye out for. Now, a player you've definitely heard the name of, 18-year-old Leny Yoro. This is someone that's being looked at by Real Madrid, Manchester United. Every big club out there is looking at this guy. I think he's kind of available for a good price as well. As a player, looks like the real deal. Got good recovery pace, makes well-timed tackles, doesn't lunge in, I think, as well. Manages to kind of defend the space fantastically. As I said earlier, centre-backs, super hard to judge. So important down to the team they're playing in, the way they're playing in as well, or the way they're playing their football, played super, super well against Aston Villa. You can see why people are going crazy for him. He's super calm under pressure too. I think he's a future superstar. I genuinely do, or genuinely do, I should say. He's someone who I think, it wouldn't shock me why these big clubs go in for him. I do think it's interesting to see if he does go to one of these, where does he get his minutes? But in terms of where the future is taking him and his kind of progression right now, he's a future superstar. Antonio Nusa, and this is one that's been linked to a few clubs. I know Chelsea have looked at him. I know Spurs are probably the most likely for his destination right now. He already plays for Norway. He's had a good time internationally. 3 goals, 3 assists this season. He does the fun stuff really well. And what I mean by fun stuff is he can dribble really nicely in tight spaces. He can kind of do it with skills or by taking on the player one-on-one and just kind of hitting the ball past him. He's got rapid pace on him, that's for sure. He does need to possibly work on his passing. I don't necessarily see him being like an incredible kind of creative force. And it would be interesting to see how he does if he went to a stronger league. And so in that sense, I will keep an eye out for him. Spurs is a nice destination for him to go to, but it's going to be an interesting time for him how he develops over the next year or so. There's definitely a player in there. But then when you look at kind of like the future superstar list here, he's definitely not. He can't lace these guys' boots just yet. Okay, let's get him out of the way then. Endrick. He's off to Real Madrid. He looks really good. Really, really good. I do wonder sometimes a little bit about like what's going to happen development-wise to him at Real Madrid. Like a lot of fans, a lot of Palmeiras fans, and also Palmeiras' like academy. We'll mention a few others in a minute. Ridiculous the players they've got coming out of there. Anyway, he has been able to flourish in a Palmeiras side where, okay, his name kind of brings a lot of eyeballs, but people aren't watching them week in, week out, and so he's had a couple of goal droughts. He's also scored some absolute worldies. The touch off the knee, then the half volley, is outrageous. It's outrageous to be doing it at whatever age you are. It's outrageous to be doing it in whatever league you're in. It's crazy. You can see why everyone wanted him. You can see why Chelsea wanted him. You can see why Real Madrid are paying what they're paying for him. And like to already be playing for Brazil and doing pretty well is really, really good. Scoring against England. I wonder what's going to happen where like, how does he fit into the Real Madrid side when, you know, Guler's there, who we'll get onto. Mbappe is now joining. Let's say Guler, but he's more of attacking mid anyway. Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, all there. Bellingham, who kind of played as well in like a very attacking role, like almost striker role last season. And now fitting in Endrick, like someone there is going to be disappointed. And I've mentioned a few times like maybe that could be Rodrigo, but we are looking at someone who has Ballon d'Or winning talent. Whether we will see it to its full potential through getting enough game time and stuff, I don't know. But I think when you look at what Real Madrid have done recently with Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo in particular, and made them into these superstars, and maybe the first season might be a little bit rough. Maybe even the second season might be a little bit rough. But it wouldn't shock me by the third season if we're seeing someone on Endrick who is just ridiculous. Kendry Paez. And when you talk about South American talents who are leaving their clubs, he is also one of them that tick that box. He's on his way to Chelsea, and maybe people will go, there's a lot of bias there. But I mentioned it about Endrick and that he's got that little thing. Flipping out. Paez does too. Honestly, Paez does too. He can strike a ball outrageously. He's only just turned 17. He's not necessarily playing for the best teams out there, like some South American talents. As I said, the Palmeiras level is ridiculous. But he's just got something. He's already doing it on an international stage at 16 years old. I don't think he joins up for Chelsea. I don't think he will be joining up with Chelsea next season. I think it's most likely to be the season after. But, and on that front, it's like keep an eye out. And I know like some of these guys I've spoken about like not seeing enough. But there's just something there. Maybe there's bias there. I don't know. But I just think that he is a ridiculous talent. And when you talk to a lot of kind of South American experts and players and people and pundits that watch a lot of South American football, they do say the same. They say that Endrick and Paez are the two crazy level footballers there who are coming out of that league or coming out of that continent. And I think we could be talking about him for a long, long time. On to a goalkeeper now. And I mentioned it about centre-backs, but goalkeepers in particular as well. Very hard to judge. Super hard to judge. Depends on the defence in front of you. But there are certain elements you can see in what they have. And Guillaume Restes, I hope I've pronounced that right, Guillaume Restes, is a goalkeeper for Toulouse who is doing, I think, a pretty good job at that. Any goalkeeper that is playing as a teenager is someone to keep an eye on, I think, generally. And I think you're already starting to see the elements that he has towards his game. I don't think his distribution is necessarily incredible. I don't think you'd be getting him, not to say that he can't improve, but I don't think you'd be getting him in a team that wants to play out from the back and where he would join up and become a defender. Don't think that's going to be happening. But I think he is a really good shot stopper, can save shots from range, isn't necessarily massive, he's only about 6'1", but comes out really well in one-on-one situations, can save the ball with his feet as well in those situations too. I think a goalkeeper can develop a lot, especially when they're playing at this age group. And to be doing it in Ligue 1 as well, when you're coming up against strong attackers and attacking sides, is also a pretty good way to develop. I don't think he's good in the air. I think he's really, really quite poor, in fact, at kind of saving crosses, coming out to claim them. Part of that may be due to his height, and as only being a teenager, he might still continue to grow. He's never going to become a 6'5" goalkeeper, so I think that is a slight issue. And as I said, not necessarily the best, I don't think, with like playing out from the back. He can ping a ball long. I think that's quite normal now for goalkeepers. But overall, good shot stopper. I think if we're looking at kind of this category, I wouldn't say he's a future superstar, unless he had like some major development in terms of becoming like a passing out the back. Because I think that's where like it's what every team wants nowadays. They want a goalkeeper who can be a good shot stopper and also can pass out the back and can claim crosses. And I don't necessarily think that is him. I think it's worth keeping an eye out though. Definitely, wouldn't say he's overrated, but I think he'll be fine. Barcelona talent Pau Cubarsi is the next guy we've got to talk about. And look, when you're already winning Champions League Man of the Match awards, you're probably doing okay, I think. The guy's only 17 years old. He's starting for Barcelona now. It's ridiculous. Like the talent, I'm glad to see him. I'm glad to see La Masia kind of have this resurgence of talent coming through. He is going to get bigger. He's already about 5'11". He's going to grow taller as well. Maybe 6'1", 6'2". Good size for a centre-back. Passes the ball fantastically. Does a super good job at that. But then can do the defensive side really well as well. I think you got a future superstar here. I think you do. Like, if he was doing it for any other side, Barcelona, United, all these kind of teams will be looking at him, and to be doing it already in the Champions League, which is tough. He had a fantastic game against kind of one of the best strikers in the world in Osman, which is no easy feat. And so I think overall, future superstar here. Lewis Miley here, again, another player that is playing Champions League football technically when he was 17 years old, and had a really good time of it, I think. They were unlucky, Newcastle, I think, with how many injuries they had, and again, that kind of, I think, impacted how the season went for them massively this season. But Lewis Miley was one of the standouts, the absolute standouts. Will he be winning a Ballon d'Or one day? Like, I don't think that's going to be happening. And as for what level of future stardom, it's tough to say. Had obviously a tough time towards the end of the season, that back injury. I think it's nice he can kind of play anywhere in that midfield, DM, centre mid, attacking mid, all makes sense. But for now, I think it's going to have to be a keep an eye out. Keep an eye out. If it wasn't for the back injury towards the end of the year, he kind of was able to finish that season strongly. We might be talking about him being a little bit higher. But for now, keep an eye out. And also, keep an eye out isn't like a bad thing. Luis Guilherme is another one who looks like he's off to the Premier League, on his way to West Ham by the looks of it. Anyway, another one off of the Palmeiras conveyor belt. 18 years old. I think he drives the ball really well. If it wasn't for the likes of Estevao, Willian, who we get onto, and Endrick, like, he would have been probably looked at and been spoken about with a lot more light on him. Rapid. Absolutely ridiculous feet on him. Super, super quick. I don't think he's played a lot of football. Statistically, hasn't played a lot of football. And so because of that, I think we're going to have to stick him into the not seen enough of just yet. But who knows, maybe this time in January we'll be sitting here and saying what a signing West Ham have made. Now, when I mentioned earlier about Endrick and Kendry Paez as the guys that the South American pundits will say, like, these are the boys, they also do give a nod to Willian Estevao, Willian, another player who's on his way to Chelsea by the looks of it. Currently 17 years old. I think when he turns 18 he would officially move there as well, so I don't think it will be next, or the summer coming, but the summer after, possibly. Another player nicknamed about Messinho, apparently, hasn't played an incredible amount of minutes either. But I think we can't just put everyone in not seen enough. Too. I don't think he's necessarily overrated because there's not a lot to rate on him right now. Dribbles beautifully, like does some really nice little tight dribbling. I do kind of worry slightly what would happen if he was kind of in the physicality of the Premier League. He's not a big guy at all. Not to say he couldn't get that or develop that side of it. You don't have to be kind of wham to be a really strong player in the Prem. More, I would say, of like a winger's winger, a traditional winger, wants to play out there, can come inside, of course, if needed, but is also creatively good and creatively strong. Do we think we've seen enough of him to be putting him up here in like future superstar and stuff? There's potential. Does my Chelsea bias also come into that? Definitely. I think we're going to put him and keep an eye out right now. Keep an eye out. And it also, again, depends on like what kind of development he has. Like Paez and Estevao have both been said that like they're going to be going straight to the Chelsea first team when they join. And so like, where will they play? How will they play? All very interesting things. And so for that, actually, we're going to move them down here. If I'm putting these boys here, we've not seen enough yet, then I think we've got to put him there. And if I'm already going to bank on Paez, let's calm down a little bit with Willian. On to Desiree Doué, and this guy is, I think, a really, really fun player to watch. Can play as an 8, can play as a 10, can play on both wings. He is almost kind of like a Bernardo Silva regen, is what, honestly, he really is. It does seem like left wing is his best place currently, and he's not really kind of touching the touchline. He's more coming inside as well. So you kind of, in that sense, you'll see what I mean by being kind of Bernardo Silva-esque. Just turned 19 years old, had a really, really strong season too for Rennes, who obviously they've got a fantastic academy themselves. With the likes of Ousmane Dembele that came through there, both footed. I really, really like him. I think he's super exciting. He's being looked at by a few clubs as well now. I think Arsenal are one of those guys too. And so I do wonder, like, if he was to join a bigger team, how would that work out? How would he work in a tactical system? But there's something really nice there. There's something really, really nice there. And so I'll be putting him and keep an eye out. Lucas Bergvall, someone who is also joining the Premier League by the looks of it, and is going to be joining Tottenham Hotspur. 18 years old, central midfielder. I think it's a big move going straight from Sweden to Spurs, but a good move nonetheless. Will he be playing week in, week out straight away? Probably not. Do I think a loan move is the best idea? Yes. I think he dribbles really, well, positionally wise, can kind of play a little bit deeper, can play a little bit further, but very much like a central midfielder. I think that's a good position for Spurs to be looking at as well, on trying to get someone that can be someone with high potential. Dribbles really well, but does it in quite risky positions. Like if he was to get tackled there, or by like high pressed there and make a mistake, it can lead to a very strong counter attack. But when I watch him, it's fun. Like he's a really fun player to watch. Bigger than you think as well. And I think he's got the physicality and can even grow more so to be a really strong central midfielder for the Premier League. I think if we're being honest, we've not seen enough just yet. Not seen enough just yet. Like if he can join Spurs and go to a certain division, that's really, really strong. But right now, I think that's a fine place to put him in. Francesco Camarda is someone that I felt like we had to talk about. Hasn't really had a lot of senior minutes, but he was the under-17 player of the tournament for the Euros. He's got a really good build on him in terms of he's 6 foot, just 16 years old. He's quite stocky as well. Hasn't played for Milan yet, AC Milan. Think we might see him a bit more next season. So in that front, I would be saying like keep an eye out for him, but generally not seen enough yet. Joao Neves, and look, this guy, we've spoken about him a few times on this channel, is a future superstar, arguably even a possible Ballon d'Or contender. But future superstar, I think like we can't put. I feel like 4 is kind of the max you can have there. But yeah, definite future superstar. Can do it all with the ball in midfield. Passing is ridiculous. Won't shock me if we see him at, say, Man City or Arsenal or wherever pretty soon. Maybe not this summer, possibly the summer after. I think it's like a £100 million buyout clause. But yeah, future superstar, crazy good, just ridiculous. Paris Bruno is someone that's been spoken about a few times. You might not have heard of his name, but he's someone who won the under-17s for Germany in the Euros and the World Cup. He's currently at Borussia Dortmund, and for a club that are really, really strong with bringing through academy products and young players and giving them minutes and developing them, he's yet to see any. And supposedly there has been a few issues off the pitch. Agent-wise, apparently there's rumours he might move to a Serie A club. I think he's going into his final year with Borussia Dortmund contract-wise. But when you watch the highlights of him, talent's definitely there. Generally, again, if I can't put him up here when I put these guys especially into here as well. Arguments he's even here. Like, in fact, maybe it'll come back to bite me in the arse later, but in a few years. But right now, like, at least these guys are majority of these guys are playing, getting senior minutes. This guy's yet to get one, and like, he's 18 years old. As I mentioned earlier, 18-year-old by no means a super old age, but I think he's maybe slightly overrated then. Now, technically, Ethan Nwaneri is playing senior minutes. He only got 13 minutes of them last season for Arsenal in the Premier League, but he got some. 17 years old. This is Arsenal's best academy product by far. Like, he is the crown jewel for Arsenal here, and if next season he can start getting minutes, or whether that be at Arsenal or in the Championship or whatever, we will be noticing him massively. He has the potential to be here, future superstar. If we're honest with ourselves, we've definitely not seen enough minutes. Like, if Estevao, if these boys haven't seen enough minutes, or even Lucas, like, then he hasn't either. But I'm kind of bored of putting them all in there when they haven't seen a lot of minutes, even though it's fair enough. I'm going to put him in future superstar. I think there's just something about when you watch him, he's got it there. He can dribble really well. He can shoot really well. He can pass super nicely. Next season, I think we'll end up speaking a lot more about him, hopefully. Arda Guler is someone who had a tough time, I think, this season. Obviously, made the dream move to Real Madrid, got a lot of injuries, or got a big injury more so, which kind of kept him out for a long time. I do wonder where, again, he features in this Real Madrid team. Like, especially in that midfield. God, like, some of Camavinga can barely get a minute. Well, he can get minutes, but Camavinga struggles sometimes. Tchouameni struggles sometimes. I know, obviously, Toni Kroos is retiring, and we don't know the future just yet of Luka Modric, but he's also a little bit further forward than them anyway. But there's no doubt that he's a talent. You can see that, for sure. If you're looking at what's happened this season, these guys all deserve to be there. Arda probably doesn't, based on just not playing enough, really. But we obviously have seen him long enough to not put him in not seen enough just yet. And so for now, keep an eye out for him. I just don't see... It's a tough job for Carlo next season to get all of these guys into that midfield and attack and make everyone happy. It's really, really difficult. But if there's one guy that's going to end up doing it, it'll be Carlo Ancelotti. I mean, he struggled with him this season when he was fit. So we'll see. But for now, keep an eye out for him. Finally, Jobe Bellingham. And I feel for Jobe sometimes, because obviously when your brother is Jude, you're going to be, spoken about as if you're a Ballon d'Or winner or a future superstar. But with Jobe, he had a fine season this year, I think, in the Championship with Sunderland. Can play as a striker, can play as midfielder, still not quite known yet. Got the physicality for it, for sure. Obviously being looked at by the likes of like Crystal Palace already. But I gave this one to Doogie, actually. I texted Doogie, who's obviously a Sunderland fan and seen a lot more of him than anyone else would have. And he said not seen enough yet. He said he's kind of tailed off towards the second half of the season. And because of that, they need to see a little bit more from him. And Sunderland themselves weren't necessarily kind of blowing the league apart last year. He also mentioned that he would snap anyone's hand off if they were trying to buy him for the quoted fee, I think of like 20 million or so, to get him. I feel for him, obviously, again, with kind of being the comparison to his older brother, who's just won the Champions League. But I think people forget he's still very, very young himself. Only 18 years old. And just because, other 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds are doing super, super well, doesn't mean we have to judge everyone that's 18 the exact same. But there we have it, guys. That is the exact list here. Let me know, who would you change? Who would you add as well to this list? Who is missing? And let me know where you think other players could be. I think there's a few in this keep an eye section here who could be a little bit higher, and maybe even they're not seen enough. Overrated, it's tough. It's tough to call any player overrated. And so don't take it too personally, guys. But there we have it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure you subscribe to the channel. It helps out so much. And keep your eyes peeled as well for later this week. I've got Pat and Henry back with me, and we'll be chatting all things Euros. So stay tuned. I'll see you later, guys. Thanks so much for watching.